on behalf of Yunus Emre Institute London, Turkey's Cultural Forum, I would like to thank you all for joining us tonight, this evening, especially in this lovely weather in London, which is very rare. We are very honored to have Selçuk Altun with us tonight. We will hear from him on his inspirations, on his book, Farewell Fountain Street. This event is organized with the support of Turkish Airlines in collaboration with Saqi Books. So we are grateful for their support as well. I'm sure you will have lots of questions in the end. How do I know? Because this event was also, partly was organized at the British Library as part of the European Writers Festival organized by UNI. And it was quite inspirational. So keep your questions for the end of the panel, where we will have a Q&A session, and you will also get to have a copy of the book if you wish, and get it signed by him. So without further ado, put your hands together for a warm welcome for Selçuk Altun.
Thank you all. As she mentioned, I came here to represent Turkey for the literature event called European Writers Festival. I live on the European side of Istanbul, so I was a legitimate person there. Exactly 50 years ago, upon graduation from university, I came to London. In 1974, I came to London, and I lived in SW6 area, Bishop's Road. Nearest tube station was Parsons Green. Today I traveled to Parsons Green, my old home. But that time, I remember I was getting £133 per month net. And with no problem, I could see the end of the month. And 4 Turks working for the same global company, we shared an apartment, and we each used to pay £35 per person. And for the suits, for the costumes, 3-piece costumes, £25. I used to pay £25. These things I remember. And traveling through subway, one station used to cost 10p, 2 and 3, 20p, something like that. So when I was visiting my old apartment today, I remembered those details. I am a retired executive banker. I worked for a major Turkish bank. But my obsession is reading. It's my something more than hobby. When I was employed by the bank towards the end of 1980s, the bank had a dormant publishing house, and they made me a board director without knowing that I was already a book lover. So I spent a lot of time there, publishing unpublished books before, translating quality books, etc. And I had a personal target that I would I would write a novel that I would like to read when I was 50 years old. So I wrote it. I know it's a long time to be a writer. It was called Loneliness Comes from the Road You Go Down. It's a poetic line I borrowed from my favorite poet, Oktay Rifat. And so this is what happened. From then on, I used to write, but I always prefer reading. I mostly read. And whenever it is time to write, I say, my God, why I am doing this instead of reading something else? Yes. My latest book is Farewell Fountain Street, sorry. But while I will briefly explain about these books, I would like to give some background information concerning the cultural history and geography of Istanbul. I live in Üsküdar, Scutari, on Asian side. As you know, Istanbul exists on two continents, east and west, harmoniously. There is a central train station called Üsküdar, where also Florence Nightingale lived and worked. For numerous times, while I was waiting my train in the station, I used to hear an announcement by a lady. She would specifically name Ayrılık Çeşmesi Sokağı. Ayrılık means farewell, and she said this to give the impression, the sad impression of farewell. So once, twice, it was out of my route. I said to my wife, let's go and see what kind of station is this. We went there. Yes, there is such a fountain, farewell fountain. This is from Ottoman time, nearly 500 years old, erected in 15th century. It's an Ottoman fountain, of course dry, but at least it's alive. It was called farewell fountain because Ottomans, when leaving from Istanbul to east, they would say goodbye to their loved ones. That's why it's called farewell. They would say farewell even if they go to war, pilgrimage, trade, etc. So it was farewell fountain. And beyond this fountain, there is a depressing, peaceful, modest street called Farewell Fountain Street. If you can, it's very peaceful, small, silent, and this street is hidden from the city by the existence of a Ottoman cemetery, unkempt Ottoman cemetery. There is a cemetery there. And this cemetery, from the headstones and etc., you can see it's a majestic place for the high-ranking officials and soldiers, but it's unkempt. So I said to myself, why don't I write a novel in which this place exists as a central character? At that time, the train route called Eurasia was ending at Farewell Fountain. Subsequently, it existed until the next province called Izmit, Nicomedia, a Roman town, Nicomedia. It starts on the Europe, goes all the way to Nicomedia. At the end of train route, there is a town called Gebze, and there is the grave of the cemetery of Commander Hannibal. Very interesting. Istanbul is the largest city of Europe, 17 million population. Well, in the last literature event, I was sitting with a Belgian, Estonian, and Ireland members. Thank you for helping me. The population of these three countries makes up 17 million, whereas Istanbul itself has a population of 17 million. Istanbul, being Istanbul, it was called Constantinople. It was the capital city of Byzantines. Byzantines during from 6th to 7th centuries was the largest empire on earth, existing on 3 different continents: Asia, Europe, and North Africa. And Constantinople, with a population of 500,000, was the largest, most advanced, richest city of the world. In Constantinople, for 7 centuries existed the most important library of the world, called Imperial Library of Constantinople. In this library, they had all the rare books or single copies of classics, and from those books there, we have Greek and Roman classics of today. When 4th Crusaders were on their way to Jerusalem to save Jerusalem from Muslims, they made a prolonged stopover in Constantinople. At that time, Byzantine kingdom was in a turmoil. There was misunderstandings between royal families. With the manipulation of Venetians living there, the 4th Crusaders sacked the city, plus the library. However, they didn't destroy the books. Most of the books were taken away by the Venetians, and they all exist in Venice at the moment, in Venice at the moment. When Byzantine fell to Sultan Mehmed II, as we know, as you know, Sultan Mehmed II was a very clever man. He was vindictive, aggressive, harsh, but he was a very clever man. He was a poet. He was a bibliophile, polyglot. He did no harm to the scientists, religious leaders, academicians, even musicians of the Byzantines. He let them free. They all went to different churches, organizations, and they bolstered the development of Renaissance. Well, 12 years ago, I wrote this book, The Sultan of Byzantium, because I have a personal respect for this civilization. And I think it is the king, the founder of this civilization, Constantine the Great, and Byzantines are underappreciated. In this book, there are 1.5 pages that I would like to read, in which I am summarizing the importance of this civilization to the modern world. Once upon a time, Byzantium was synonymous with intrigue, but this image has gradually changed. For me, Byzantium mingled East and West and became the most prominent civilization of its own time, and then it triggered the Renaissance. The other person says, "What a wonderful summary. It might be added that no other empire ever stayed alive and active for over 1100 years. In Byzantium, sovereignty did not always pass from father to the eldest son. In order to allow the most deserving person to ascend the throne, there was a flexible selection process. And because of that, there were occasional periods of bloody conflict. But didn't Rome and Hellenistic Greece have similar problems? Since in those ages, communications were not as advanced as in Byzantium, their recorded history is incomplete. The greatness of Byzantium begins with her will to continue the legacy of Greece and Rome, to which she was the natural heir. As you said, the heritage was enriched by a touch of the East. Byzantium laid the foundations of modernism. She initiated state social institutions. She disciplined the military, educational, financial, legal, and technological sectors. She made sports and entertainment an integral part of life. To raise the quality of life, she formed organizations for the improvement of healthcare, city planning, the crafts, fashion, jewelry making, and social manners. As a role model, she influenced her neighbors in science, culture, and the arts. You also noted that Byzantine scholars who found out into Europe after the fall of Constantinople paved the way for Renaissance. The main hero is called Ziya Adlan. He belongs to Ottoman dynasty, to Mahmud II. However, he lives and works in Geneva as a philosophy academician. In his early 60s, he is told that he has cancer, he is about to die. So he comes back to Istanbul to say goodbye to his remaining loved ones, and he has one account to settle. That's why he's back in Istanbul. His main interest is the academician Samuel Beckett, the philosophy of Samuel Beckett. Actually, he tries to live like Samuel Beckett. In the platform, there are characters, places, etc. They are all underappreciated. Istanbul, in my opinion, is an underappreciated city. Himself is an underappreciated academician. There are underappreciated Ottoman streets, underappreciated musicians, singers, even underappreciated bookstores, cemeteries, etc. I will read a short passage this book. Professor Ziya Adlan, at every chance, goes back to Istanbul. His friend, a doctor from Kuzguncuk, he says, Geneva's accomplished Turkish doctors asked me why I jumped at every chance to go to Istanbul. Because, I began, I'll never pass up an opportunity to visit a city where people drive straight at a friend as a joke. It's a common joke still. I survived this. Answer the question, who is it, with it's me. Fight with someone to pay the bill at a restaurant, but never give an inch to that same person in traffic. Show their son's penis to guests. Play it safe by buying extra loaves of bread when it snows. Quickly clean the house before the maid comes. Consider stepping on their friend's brand new shoes a hilarious joke. Take pleasure in watching heavy construction equipment work. Wait until the very last day to pay a bill. Mess up newly laid cement with scribbles. Don't rush when caught in the rain without an umbrella. Who will, during a power outage in their building, check other buildings too? Are excited to fire shots in the air at weddings and soccer games. Buy mobile phones worth 3 times their salary. Offer gifts of fake gold coins at weddings. This is very common. Now one full gold costs 25,000 liras. Replenish the shampoo bottle by adding water to it. Repair an appliance by beating it first. Find more pleasure in reading another person's newspaper. This happens in the boats, especially Istanbul boats. When they hear there is none, ask none at all. First wipe their hands with a wet towel and then their shoes. At a funeral, want first of all to know the age of the deceased. Write wash me in the dirt cake on cars' windows. This is very common everywhere. Fill the ashtray with water to keep ashes from flying away in windy weather. It's very functional. Eat potatoes first at a meal, peas next, and meat last. Add salt to their food before they taste it. Wedge a piece of paper under a wobbly table leg. Choose the oldest and most worn-out bills when paying for things. Continue to chat at the door after they've said their goodbyes. Choose the urinal nearest to wall. I will read, but first I will try to control myself. Harass even the snowman. Check a gas leak with a lighter. Blow their horn to salute friends. Brush their teeth for the first time in years before they go to a dentist. Put a doily on top of everything in the house. Shroud the remote control in nylon. Count the number of seats at a concert and estimate how much the organizer is making. These are the results of heavy research on my part. But these are all true. Scream out directions to tourists. Think they'll get good results by speaking in a scolding tone when they themselves ask for directions. Include in one of their cheerful songs the line, "Since there is a fire, we tend the fire." Feel of two minds towards terrorists who arrive late for the ambush soldiers have set up, wondering what may have gone wrong, etc., etc. There are some excerpts from songs, but it's getting less meaningful. So that's where I stop. So, in opinion of Professor Adlan, these characteristics are all examples from the characters of Samuel Beckett. In this book, I tried to summarize and how should I say? To prove a transformation in literature. The topic of European Writers' Festival was transformations. And I had a theory which I thought it was a literary transformation. I put it here, but I didn't try to prove myself to readers. So I mentioned this in summary. Apart from this, I have written an essay which I plan to read, but it's less than 10 minutes. So here, I will try to prove an literary transformation, which I called the essay, Why Godot Wouldn't Come. I love reading Samuel Beckett. I prefer his short fictions and find them more poetic than his poetry. I have all his books, plus a signed book by himself. I like him so much. I was amazed at his fantastic life story and respect his friendship with silence. Paul Muldoon, a modern poet, said, "No one has understood better than Beckett that silence is not an absence of sound, but a physical presence, perhaps even a character." Yep. Beckett preferred writing letters to talking. He wrote more than 20,000 letters. 6,000 was published in 4 volumes. Of course, he hated discussing his work. 2006 was his centenary. An important anthology called Beckett Remembering Beckett was published, and the editors were James and his wife Elizabeth Knowlson. Professor Knowlson, born 1933, was a friend and authorized biographer of Beckett, and he founded the Beckett Archive. In this essential book, there is an interview with Beckett, plus memories of those selected, few who presumably knew him. As we know, Waiting for Godot, a tragicomic piece by Beckett created in 1949, was the most talked about play of the 20th century. In his revolutionary work, there are 2 nearly twin men called Estragon and Vladimir, who periodically meet beside a barren tree and wait for a mysterious man called Godot who never comes. I was astonished with what I learned from reading Peter Woodthorpe's anecdote. He was a biochemistry student at Cambridge University in 1950s who played Estragon in the British premiere of Waiting for Godot. Beckett liked him and admired his acting. By the way, Peter Woodthorpe was pathologist Max in the TV series called Inspector Morse. Do you remember him? He was in this series. In the final paragraph of his part, he says, "I met Beckett 2 or 3 times while he was in London, and one night he took me to his cousin John's house. There was a cellist there that night. It was a musical evening somewhere in Hampstead. It was all a bit overwhelming. And in the cab coming back, of course they are both drunks, I did say to him, 'What is it Waiting for Godot all about? Everybody is coming round saying different things.' And we laughed a lot. He said, 'But it's all symbiosis, Peter.' That's what he said. The moment I read the word symbiosis, the nicknames of the 2 characters came to my mind. Estragon was Gogo and Vladimir's Didi. This biological term, symbiosis, was a powerful hint for a pending puzzle, meant an interaction between 2 dissimilar organisms living in close physical association, especially one in which benefits the other. My assertion was, Godot would never come. Godot was on the stage. 2 zigzagging characters, Estragon was God and Vladimir was idiot. God, idiot, of course, you should eliminate this, it becomes Godot. While joking absurdly between themselves, they were setting a trap to the audience. Despite the generous hints he gave, the audience were confused. Noticing the sensation created by the name of the play, Beckett enjoyed the outcome silently. To substantiate my conclusion, I reviewed the play once again. Estragon, the god, was commanding and condescending, who even says people are bloody ignorant apes. Where Vladimir, the idiot, is naive and modest at the start and vice versa in the second half. They would repeatedly change hats to underline symbiosis and refreshed. Vladimir would insist, yes, we are magicians, but let us persevere in what we resolve. Implying the trap, they said. here is more important hint. Estragon's nickname is Gogo. Twice Gogo in his name. And Vladimir's nickname is Didi. From back, it becomes idiot. And if you add God, it becomes God. And the final lines of the play are an absurd allegory. Vladimir, well, shall we go? Estragon, yes, let's go. They do not move. Samuel Beckett was in France during the German invasion. He joined the French resistance and worked as a courier in rather depressing contexts. Waiting for Godot was written in the aftermath of the Second World War. I believe the idiot god. I mean, he means the idiot gods as a literary transformation. I believe the idiot god was a kind of literary transformation created in reaction to the cruelties of the fascist leaders of Europe. Then I checked internet to see if my idea was pre-owned. No, it wasn't. I asked theater academicians and Beckett scholars in Istanbul if it was plausible. They said, yes. In one of my London bookstore safaris, I shared my viewpoints with a poet friend. He said, if I were to use this in one of my novels, it could be plagiarized. He suggested I send a short essay to relevant sources. I sent to 2 dozens, mostly to academicians, and more than half did not bother to reply. So it's a true story, which I survived. Now the reactions. My mini essay was published in the magazine called The Beckett Circle, the official periodical of the Samuel Beckett Society in the USA, Spring 2012, Volume 35, in the form of a letter to the editor. This piece is now in the archives of many US university libraries. An eminent Beckett scholar and the then chairman of the Samuel Beckett Society, Prof. Jean-Michel Rabat, in his email of November 4, 2011, said, I too believe that Godot contains more than God. You have a point, and I like immensely the suggestions of an idiot God. Professor David Lloyd of University of Southern California, in his email of August 16, 2011, said, your theory seems to be very plausible. So far as I can tell, your theory is also original. Support for the notion of God as idiot would come from Macbeth, a play Beckett cites at the beginning of a later play, Come and Go. Professor Daniel Gunn, one of the editors of the Letters of Samuel Beckett, in his email of October 27, 2011, said, I have not read your theory before, and I certainly think it's plausible. Louise Overbeck, researcher and another editor of the Letters of Samuel Beckett, in her email of November 2, 2011, said, I think you offer a unique reading of Godot. I have not seen it before. Certainly, symbiosis applies to the pairing of Vladimir and Estragon. Derek Jones, writer and literary agent of A.P. Watt, which used to represent Beckett, in his email of October 3rd, 2011, said, what a brilliant insight. I trust your theory will be properly debated. Well, my theory is not debated at all. In the English section of the internet, there is no topic for why Godot wouldn't come. And in the Turkish, there are some, thanks to the local interest. On the Times Literary Supplement of February 24, 2017, in the commentary page, Freelance, the American critic Scott Sherman wrote about Selçuk Altun. He appreciated the progress of my theory. In the final paragraph, he says, I asked Altun if Beckett had any special relevance in Turkey today. Beckett was a master of the absurd, was all he would say. Well, in our panel, the moderator of the panel was an editor from Times Literary Supplement. So he approved this paragraph. In Farewell Fountain Street, Professor Ziya Adlan, the protagonist, is a Turkish academician who teaches in Geneva. When a close friend asks why he jumps at every chance to go to Istanbul, he says, the pages I read to you, he says, in that still lies a hidden world that Beckett would envy. I'm on the last page, in case you are bored. Ziya Adlan also worries his discourse made no impact in literature or theater circles. He claims, if those findings had been the work of Jacques Derrida, George Steiner, or Harold Bloom, they would surely have earned a place on the agenda. While the media had ignored the discourse of an unknown Turkish academician, at the very least, I had come up with an appropriate aphorism for this case. Whoever tells the truth also matters. I believe in this heavily. Well, to prove this, I am going back to Peter Woodthorpe. The following is also from Peter Woodthorpe, who plays Estragon in the play. He says, on the first night, there was only one curtain call, and there were boos and catcalls. One was, this is why we lost the colonies. I remember the night that was shouted. Business was bad and hostile, and they told you they hated it. But then the whole atmosphere changed, dramatically changed, after the Sunday reviews by critics Thomas Hobson and Kenneth Tynan. There were 2 shows on a Sunday, and they were sold out. Can you imagine? 2 critics says this play is okay. Cheers and bravos and laughter, altogether different. What it was the power of those 2 papers, the Observer and the Sunday Times, with the theater-going public. I think Ziya Adlan was right. Whoever tells the truth also matters. This completes my summary discourse regarding an undiscovered literary transformation. Now, as Vladimir famously asked, well, shall we go? Thank you. I wrote this essay. I will send this essay to some other periodicals and etc. And I hope it will appear somewhere in Google. But this is the story. Many of the sources I wrote, they didn't even bother to reply, most academicians. For instance, I am mentioning Professor James Knowlton. He could have at least said, I don't agree with you. Well, one famous author, J.M. Coetzee, we all know him. He's a Nobel Prize laureate. I wrote to him as well. He responded, but I didn't include his response here. He said, I had to disagree with you because Waiting for Godot was written in French, and in French, there is no God with this name. It could be in French, but he could have been using English. But it would be dispolite to challenge him. But I totally disagree with him, because Beckett knew he would translate this subsequently into English. So it was a good chance to bring this essay to their attention in summary form. And luckily, Times Literary Supplement editor was there. I'll send this first to him, Toby Lichtig. And we discussed things with him. Well, I also collect rare books and signed books. we were having a meeting this event was held in the British Library. And our panel group was having a small meeting in a room called Eliot Room. Eliot was also a banker who turned to be a poet. I said to him, we are in Eliot Room. T.S. Eliot died of emphysema. One of the latest books he signed in St. Louis, his hometown. He went there to see St. Louis for the last time before he died. And he signed the book with his emphysemic hand.
Right.
I said, I have this book. So I have other books, different books, important books. But I always and only collect books signed by the authors I admire, European or Turkish. Whenever I buy a signed book, even if I read this book, I reread it, because this time the author reads it to me because he signed it. That's the satisfaction I get reading this book. Well, I don't have a book signed by Virginia Woolf because she's too expensive. But of course, I have a limit. I may be buying a Virginia Woolf, but I have a limit. I never pass beyond this certain limit. Well, so that's what I have to offer from my side. If there is anything you want further for discussion, please ask. But in this theory, this is a theory, I don't want to discuss. You may have objections. For instance, you may say there is no T in this equation of yours. I have no answer for this.
Thank you very much, Selçuk Altun. It was fantastic. And obviously I wouldn't challenge because you have too many challenges. Is there anyone who would like to ask any question?
Yes. So thank you for a very amusing talk. I want to ask you whether Samuel Beckett ever changed his mind about the end of whichever stupid god won at the end of World War II. Because clearly it was the Jewish hubris god, Yahweh, for whom we all have to believe in a new religion called polyculturality. I wonder whether he had ever realized what we all are realizing, and most especially thanks to the Turkish people who are proposing against the hubris.
Madam, in my opinion, Beckett was not religious. I read everything about him. He nearly died when he was hiding in France. Thanks to his wife, he is alive. He was psychologically handicapped during this time. He famished. The idiot god he refers to, in my opinion, are the fascist leaders of Europe. That's, huh?
They did not believe in the god, they believed in their nation and their race.
Yes, but these gods are the stupid fascist leaders. This is my opinion. Of course, you may not agree, but by God, he doesn't mean God. Also, he mentions there is a specific paragraph, maybe I missed this one. One minute. Well, if you give me 2 minutes, I'll find the paragraph where I want to read to you. Yes. I found the paragraph. And God, he famously turned to actor Ralph Richardson and said, "If I had wanted to say God with Godot, I would have been content to say God." So that's the sentence, which I think proves he doesn't mean God with Godot.
Did I misunderstand when you were saying that Samuel Beckett had said that a god had won World War II? And in speaking of a god, he meant a Nazi god.
No, I didn't say this. So he didn't mean God with Godot. He is referring to fascist leaders of Europe. And also he explains to Ralph Richardson that if I had wanted to say God with Godot, I would have been content to say God. Have you ever been to Istanbul?
Yes.
Good.
Very briefly, unfortunately. But if he was referring to Godot rather than God, would that not be why he doesn't attribute National Socialism as worshipping a god, but worshipping an Ersatz god, a Godot? That would be an explanation.
I am not going to challenge this. This is
Yes.
Hi, hello, hi. Thank you so much for your talk. I've got two questions. The first one is and apologies, I've only read a few of your books and I know about you. Your choice of the genre, you focus on the novel. Have you considered writing short stories as an example? The second question I have is that a lot of the literature we see, Turkish literature in English, it centers around Istanbul, which is great. I love Istanbul. I was in Istanbul on Friday and I was in Ankara yesterday.
good.
But we don't see much literature coming out set in other cities of Turkey. And I wanted to get your opinion on that. That can be a blessing because Istanbul is a fantastic city, but it can be a curse in a way because the impression that you get of Turkey is it's just Istanbul and that's it and nothing else.
Thank you. Well, my novels are short. They are already short. So they are kind of novella between short story and novel. I actually like reading short, so I prefer writing short. This is a good question, the second part. I mentioned that Istanbul is an underappreciated metropole. Actually, I spent majority of my time out in Anatolia. In some other books, I gave place to these other cities as well. I would like to take this opportunity to explain an anecdote of mine. My father was a civil servant. He would be appointed to remote and poor towns in Turkey in early 1950s. One of the places my father was appointed to was close to an important city called Urfa. which is a survivor of a recent earthquake. Urfa is the biblical Edessa. And Edessa is nicknamed City of Gods. Abraham lived there. Job, Lot, they were all from Urfa. And they may have successfully illuminated wherever they lived. But when we lived there, there was no electricity. There was no kindergarten, no parks at all. My favorite time of the day was when my mother read to me and my younger sister after the lunch. She would read from a thick, tattered books, and I would watch her mesmerized. I used to think she is giving a life whatever she saw in the pages. And when following year I learned reading, I started building up a library. My first library was a fragile small shoebox. I remember it was pale blue. So this library is still going on, growing and growing, sir. So I spent most of my time out of Istanbul, but Istanbul is something else. And I think it needs more devotion in the books, especially the Scutari, old Ottoman parts.
When it comes to your second question about the city, other cities, there are some novels translated into English depicting like Izmir, Smyrna. So we had an author last year, and the same festival, the book was about Smyrna, called The Silence of Shehrada. You can find and read it.
Can I request that Yunus Emre, if you have on your website, have a recommendation of such books, because it really helps us, because I love reading like you. And I go to Istanbul, one of my motivations is to buy books, because firstly, they are cheaper and they're good. But I've read like Pamuk and Shafak and some of the others and Said Faik and Tan Pinar. But
Excellent.
most of the books, I get the feeling, I've read books about the cities, majority of them are set in Istanbul,
Yeah.
and a lot of the other places. My personal opinion is that if you've not been to those places, then you'll not know. And books are...
I presume you haven't read this one.
I've not read this one, no.
Okay, I'll give this copy to you. I'll sign this copy to you.
All right.
Yeah. We also have a big library here. We have about 15,000 books. You can borrow books from our library.
Okay.
Bahattin Çağdaş, Bizans konusunda çok ilgili olduğunuzu söylediniz. Bizans fethedildikten sonra Bizanslılara ne oldu? Mesela şu anda Bizanslılar var mı?
Şimdi Bizanslılara çok ilgili olduğumu söylemedim. Bizanslıların hak ettikleri yeri tarihte alamadıklarını söyledim. Şeyi biliyorum ama Bizanslılardan bir iki tane aile kaldı. Zaten aldığında iki tane, bir İstanbul kalmıştı, bir Konstantinopol kalmıştı, bir de Peloponnes'te bir yer kalmıştı. Zaten pek kalmamıştı 50 bin bir nüfus vardı. Onlar teker teker yok oldular. Yalnız bir seyahat yazarı Ukrayna'da, Romanya'da Bizans imparatorlarının soyadını taşıyan iki tane bulmuş. Aile bulmuştu. Hatta bir tane de Jamaika'da bulmuşlar. Böyle gitmişler, orada bir adam orada ölmüş. Paleolog. Yani son paleolog sülalesiydi en son. Yani ya bir tane ya iki tane var. Hatta bir tanesi, onu söylediniz. Bir arkadaşım kitabı okumuş. Dedi ki ya Yunanistan'da soyadı buna benzeyen birisi var dedi. O kitap yolladık, adam teşekkür bile etmedi. Yani bir iki tane ya var yok, bitti.
Rumlar devamı diyebilir miyiz?
Hayır,
Diyemeyiz.
hayır diyemeyiz. Çünkü onlar Romalılar resmi dil olarak Grekçeyi seçmişler. Zaten Bizans diye bir şey yok. Onlar kendilerine yeni Romalılar, değil mi? Yeni Romalılar diyorlar. Doğu Romalılar diyor. Bir Alman tarihçi söylemiş. 17. yüzyılda bir Alman tarihçi bunlara bu ismi takmış.
Any other questions? Final one? We are closing. So, done. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Teşekkür ederim.